My parents stole 1500, then sued me for family debt. I didn't cry. I sued back. When truth hit court, 52 messages exploded on my phone. I never imagined the divorce with my family would feel like being dumped by a boyfriend. It wasn't a big battle, a screaming match over Thanksgiving dinner, or a heated argument in the driveway. No, it arrived in the most anticlimactic way possible. A single message from my father that appeared on our group chat as I was brushing my teeth. "You are out. We don't need you anymore." I laughed when I first saw it, as if it were a joke. He'd never sent anything like this before. The guy rarely texted me unless he asked me to transfer money to their account or reminded me to pick up mom's cholesterol medication. I stared at the message, blinking, hoping for a response like LOL or just kidding. But it never arrived. Then my sister Hannah leaped in as if she'd been waiting her entire life for this moment. Finally. Man, that one struck a little harder. She and I were never close, but I had no idea she despised me. I had covered her rent twice, paid for her college textbooks, and even assisted her in purchasing a used car after hers was totaled. She had stated "thank you" once via SMS. The silence that followed lasted almost 3 seconds. Then I said, "Good timing. I just canceled your payments." And with that, I was done. I strolled into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at the counter, watching the group chat on my phone light up like it was on fire. At 11:48 p.m., I received 52 fresh messages. I did not read them immediately away. I wanted to sit in silence for a little longer. It was the first time in years that I felt like I had any power in that family, because they had no idea that I had been holding their small world together for far longer than they wanted to admit. It began gently, as it always does. My mother, Margaret, had knee surgery 6 years ago and required someone to drive her to physical treatment 3 times per week. My father, Richard, was too preoccupied with work. My sister was in college and did not want to miss her weekend shifts, so I stepped up. Then there were the grocery deliveries, the insurance paperwork, and the time I left work in the middle of a meeting because Mom had forgotten her prescription and was too nervous to catch the bus. The first time I paid one of their bills, their water was turned off, and they didn't have time to get to the office. That developed into a habit. I somehow became the emergency fund, ride service, emotional support hotline, and unpaid helper all at once. But I've never said no, not once. I kept reminding myself that's what family does. You do not keep score until they do. When my father was promoted 6 weeks ago, everything changed. It was not a tiny bump. He was earning real money for the first time in years. I only found out when my aunt mentioned it at a cookout. That night, I emailed him, "Congrats," and he replied with a thumbs up emoji. There's nothing more. Within a week, the number of inquiries began to decrease. My mother canceled our monthly coffee. My sister has stopped responding to my check-ins. There will be no more "Can you help us with?" or "Can you send?" Only radio silence. I suspected they were finally figuring things out on their own. It turned out they didn't need me anymore. That realization struck hard. The worst aspect was not the message itself. It was the casual way they tossed me, like if I were an old coat taking up space in the closet. No explanation, no thanks, simply "you're out." And I spent the rest of the night writing a list of every account, subscription, and recurring payment associated with me. Their phone plan in my name, my father's Spotify Premium, my mother's Kindle Unlimited, the Netflix account my sister used more than anybody else. All of them, one by one. I went into the bank app and canceled the monthly transfers I had been making to help with food and electricity. I logged on to the family calendar and deleted myself. I removed the group chat from my favorites, removed them from emergency contact lists, barred them from using my Uber account, and even changed the password to the Hulu account I knew they used on Sunday nights. I don't believe they knew how many invisible strings I was holding until I severed them. At 11:53 p.m., after cleaning out the previous account, I finally opened the messages. My mother's confusion had turned into panic. "What do you mean, canceled? What are the payments?" My father was trying to seem harsh. "We'll sort it out without you." My sister, always the source of unnecessary drama, wrote, "You're a selfish brat. I hope it was worthwhile." Then, of course, came the guilt card. After everything we've done for you, everything they'd done. I closed the app without responding. I slept better that night than I have in years. The morning after the messages, I awoke to an unsettling silence, as if something had been taken from the air. I brewed coffee, opened my phone, and glanced at the group conversation. 71 unread messages. I didn't open it immediately. I just let it sit there, buzzing sometimes like a dying fly on the windowsill. I knew what those texts would contain: guilt trips, demands, and revisionist history. Eventually, curiosity triumphed. It started with my mother. "Are you really going to do this to your own family? I can't believe you are so ungrateful. We took care of you for many years." Years, Lauren. Then it escalated to threats. "Return all you received from us, that car, the furnishings, the items we gave you when you moved out." And then finally, "You are no longer welcome in this family." That was the one that did it. It left me feeling hollow rather than outraged. This is the type of message you would expect from a landlord, not your mother. What about the car? I purchased it. Every single payment came from my account. The couch was a used brown couch that they gave me because their new one was on its way, and they didn't want to pay the haul fee. Everything they provided me was ludicrous. If we kept score, they owed me years in rent, rides, groceries, time off work, canceled vacations, late-night pharmaceutical trips, and weekends spent babysitting my sister's children so she could clear her mind. I never asked for anything back. I never asked for thanks. But they were correct in one respect. I was no longer a member of the family. So I made it official. First, the locks. I scheduled a locksmith appointment for that afternoon. He arrived an hour later. I didn't only replace the front door, I also changed the side door, the garage keypad, and the dumb little lock on the backyard shed. I collected every spare key they might have had access to. There was still one beneath the fake rock in the garden. I took it, threw it on the driveway, and smashed it with a hammer. Then I went digital, logging into every account I'd ever helped them with, including the Amazon Prime subscription I'd allowed them use and the online insurance portal for mom's medications that I'd set up using my email. I updated the passwords. Every streaming service is gone. Every automatic payment was halted. Their Uber account, which was still using my old credit card, was deactivated. The family calendar that I had kept for years, doctor's appointments, vet visits, birthdays, was wiped. It took roughly 2 hours to completely remove myself from their life, but I did not stop there. I unlocked the fireproof box in the closet containing all of my documentation, bank records, and contracts, and picked out a folder titled Emergency. Inside was the phone number for Elliot, my lawyer. I hired him 3 years ago following a dispute with a freelancing client who attempted to defraud me of cash. I've kept him on retainer ever since. I told him everything, every transfer account, and payment I'd paid in the previous 6 years. I inquired as to what they could claim. He told me to maintain a note of everything I had. I was the type of person who maintained receipts. This had always been the case. I didn't trust my memory. "You're covered," he said, but I'd keep an eye on them. And then something changed in me. I wasn't simply hurt anymore. I was alert because I knew them. I understood how their minds functioned. People who have felt entitled to you for a long time are unable to cope with rejection. They change the story. Suddenly, you're the villain. You owe them. You betrayed them, no matter what you've done for them. When you stop, they make it appear as if you have always been the problem. Sure enough, a few days later, my cousin texted me a screenshot of my mom's Facebook post. It was a hazy, deceptive little item with a pastel background and cursive writing. "Sometimes the child you sacrifice the most for is the one who turns their back when you need them most." There were numerous responses. "I'm sorry you are going through this, Margaret. Kids today are really selfish. You did your best. What happened?" She did not respond to that one. Of course not. She just said, "It's too hard to talk about. Please pray." She understood what she was doing. I did not make a comment. I did not message her. I did not correct the record. That part of me, the one that wanted to explain, defend, and prove my point, was gone. Allow them to tell their story. I had the receipts and the facts. For almost 2 weeks, everything was blissfully quiet. No texting or calling, not from them, not from my sister, not from the individuals who used to stop by and ask for favors because you're the only one who gets it, Lauren. I began to wonder if everything was truly finished. Of course, it wasn't. Because if you cut off those who are used to bleeding you dry, they will not simply go on. They conspire. And one morning, I opened my closet, reached for an old book I used to keep cash in as a child, just in case of an emergency, and felt nothing. I flipped through the pages. Okay. I checked again and again. My hands became shaky. 18,500. Gone. That's when I realized they had been in my house. The incident occurred on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning that feels like nothing until it becomes everything. I had a flat tire the night before and chose to work from home. Around 11 a.m., I went into my closet and pulled out an old folder containing tax paperwork. The folder was hidden behind my teenage collection of Bronte novels and worn poetry anthologies, which I rarely examined. One book in particular stuck out, Wuthering Heights. Hefty, hardbound, and weighty with more than just paper. It wasn't actually a book. This was a vault. When I was 15, I hollowed it out and carved the center with an ancient X-Acto knife in my bedroom. It used to hold birthday cash and notes that I didn't want my sister to read. As I grew older, the practice persisted. Even after I opened a real savings account, I enjoyed having actual cash on hand, my just-in-case money. I built it up gradually over the years. When I received a freelance bonus or unexpected refund, I added to it. 30 here, 40 there. No one knew it existed, including my buddies. It's just me. And maybe my mother. She helped me unpack when I first moved into this place several years ago. She picked up the book, chuckled when it felt too light, flipped through it, and mentioned how cunning I used to be. I laughed with her. I did not think twice about it. You'll know it's bad when I open that book and it's empty. I checked it again, flipped over each page, and shook it. Nothing. Then I looked through the other books, the cabinets, and under the floorboards, where I had once hidden a birthday card. Every significant location has vanished. All of it. 18,500. Gone. And not one lock was broken. No doors were forced. No windows had cracked. There are no traces of a break-in. I knew exactly what had happened. I knew it in the same way that you know a glass is going to fall before it touches the floor. They used the key, not the front door key. I had changed all of them after they shut me off. But I had forgotten about the basement door. It had an old external lock that we rarely used, and I hadn't gotten around to upgrading it. I gave that key to my father when he came over 2 winters ago to look at a leak. I never asked for it back. They still held it. They allowed themselves in. Quiet, clean, and surgical. Straight to the hiding place. Inside and outside. That detail bothered me more than the missing money. They had not come to destroy anything. They did not steal my TV or laptop. They came for one thing only, cash. They knew exactly where it was. I sat on the floor for a long time, nor crying, nor wailing, simply staring at the empty book, as if it will change its mind and return it. Then I got up, manually shut the basement door, and called the police. They sent a patrol officer there to take the report. He was empathetic but honest. Without surveillance or evidence of forcible entrance, it would be difficult to prosecute charges. I gave them names anyhow. I told them who I thought had done it, how they would have entered, and what they would have taken. When he went, I contacted my lawyer, Elliot. He came back the next morning, carried a notepad, asked questions, and appeared angrier than I did. Do you have records of all cash withdrawals and proof that the money existed and was in the house? I brought out the photograph. Years ago, I took a photo of the hollowed-out book as a prank for a friend. It showed the stockpile halfway full, with the message, "My teenage paranoia paid off." That was sufficient for Elliot. He drafted a letter the same day, demanding repayment of stolen cash with a 7-day deadline, or we'd file for civil theft and seek restitution in court. The letter was direct, unemotional, and frigid, and it made me feel, for the first time in a long time, like I was wearing true armor. I mailed the letter using certified mail. Then I waited. 3 days later, my sister ended the stillness. Not my parents, but my sister. She contacted me directly. Really? You're suing mom and dad? Are you out of your mind? They're having a tough time. You have money. What is the big deal? It was so nonchalant and contemptuous, as if it was only a misunderstanding, as if they were due the money. I did not respond. A few hours later, she followed up. You are being cruel. You know they wouldn't do it unless they were desperate. You're still a member of this family, whether you like it or not. I lingered at the last line for a long time. Still a member of this family. That's when I realized, to them, family didn't imply affection. It represented access to favors, money, and me. And for the first time in my life, I knew they never considered me a daughter. They viewed me as a resource, and now that resource was battling back. They were not about to let that go without a fight. And neither was I. On the 7th day after Elliot sent the demand letter, I received an email confirming that it had been received and signed for Visibly. Still no reaction from them. There was no call, apology, or explanation, just a tense quiet. I suspected they were stalling, trying to figure out what to do. Perhaps they were scurrying for money. Maybe they felt humiliated, but that illusion was destroyed 3 days later. I was preparing lunch when someone began beating on my front door. Not knocking, but banging. I didn't even have to look. I knew it was Hannah, my sister. She hadn't contacted me personally in weeks, except for that one text, which was an attempt to guilt trip me. Now she was outside my door, ranting like if we were on a reality show. "Are you seriously doing this? Are you suing Mom and Dad?" I stood behind the door, out of sight. Let her yell. I wasn't giving her the gratification of a face-to-face confrontation. "They are family, Lauren. You don't sue your own family." I did not respond. She continued going. "Do you know why they did this? You know they wouldn't have done that unless it was absolutely necessary." I remained silent. Then she said the portion that explained everything I needed to know. "They only took it because they knew you were hiding it from them." I stopped breathing. That was not a guess. That was a slip. She'd just admitted it. She attempted to backtrack, yelling something about being pushed too far and saying, "You've always been selfish." But I had already heard what I needed. She eventually left, yelling curses loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I called Elliot immediately. "We go forward," I said. He did not hesitate. Within 36 hours, he filed the following wave of legal action, including civil theft, a demand for compensation, and legal fee reimbursement. This was no longer simply a warning shot. We were going inside. My parents eventually answered, but not with an apology. They confessed accepting the money through their attorney, but claimed it was not theft, but rather reimbursement. They claimed that the money I had in my home was a portion of long overdue familial debts. My father, Richard, stated that I had benefited financially and emotionally from decades of support, and it was appropriate for them to seek some of that back now that they were in need. My mother, Margaret, claimed that caring for me into adulthood imposed a financial strain on them that they were never reimbursed for. They pointed to old grocery bills, utilities from when I lived at home, and even wear and tear on their vehicle from years of trips and appointments. It was amusing until they went further. They filed a countersuit. They sued me for unpaid support and services. They provided a spreadsheet of expenditures that they claimed I owed them. Some of it was completely made up, while others were warped beyond recognition. My sister even claimed personal suffering as a result of being exposed to the toxic behavior of a sibling. She requested compensation. I sat in Elliot's office, holding the documents as if it were from another world. "This is insane," I stated. He did not disagree. "It's strategic," he explained. "They are expecting you will panic, quit your lawsuit, and settle privately. This is about scaring you." However, the result was the opposite. I felt clear. They didn't simply steal from me. They sought to twist the truth and make me the bad guy. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how often they'd done it previously. For example, when I stopped paying them monthly payments, they claimed I was withholding assistance, or when I failed to drive my mother to her appointment with 2 hours' notice, and she informed the family that I had abandoned her. When I set a boundary, they termed it betrayal, and now they were attempting to bury me in paperwork and fraudulent claims. So I began prepping. I searched through my data and retrieved bank statements, screenshots, and old emails. I sorted through years of receipts, calendars, and cash transfers. I created a timeline. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening. People found out. My cousin contacted me, followed by my aunt and a woman with whom my mother used to play cards at the community center. My sister was unable to keep her mouth shut. Therefore, the story leaked. She had been whining to anyone who would listen, hoping to get sympathy. However, it was ineffective, since the more people listened, the worse it sounded. They took what? Did they break into her house? Did they steal her savings? So now they're suing her. It was spreading gently but quickly, and my parents began to feel it. My aunt contacted me in tears, saying she had addressed my mother, and my mother had broken down, saying I was attempting to destroy the family, that I was twisting events to make them appear like monsters. But I didn't need to twist anything. They'd done everything on their own. Elliot contacted later in the week with more information. We demanded a forensic analysis of their finances, which revealed they were not struggling, not even close. They had money in retirement accounts, a paid-off rental property, and many months' worth of savings remaining. They were not drowning. They were only upset that they didn't have access to mine. They didn't do this because they needed the money, Elliot told me. They did it because they felt entitled to it. He was correct. It was never about desperation. It was all about control. And now, with the truth coming out in public and the court date nearing, they were losing control of the situation. They were not going to let that happen quietly. And I had no idea how terrible things were about to get. The end did not happen in a courtroom. It came as murmurs, screenshots, and public humiliation. After my parents filed the countersuit, everything started to leak. I didn't tell anyone, but my sister couldn't stay quiet. She desperately needed validation. She told one cousin her version of events, claiming that I had gone insane and sued our own parents over a mistake. But then that cousin released the actual messages, and the explanation no longer fit. It spread like a wildfire. My father texted, "You're out. We don't need you anymore." My sister responded, "Finally." I replied, "Good timing. I just terminated your payments." The conversation ended up in our wider family group chat. From there, it spread to old family friends, neighbors, and even members of their church. Within days, my parents' flawless reputation was disintegrating in slow motion. My aunt contacted me first, her voice a mix of bewilderment and rage. "Is it true, Lauren? Did they take your money?" I did not refute it. I did not explain it either. I basically said, "There is a case pending. Everything will be revealed soon." The silence on the line told me plenty. She knew. By the end of the week, everyone was talking. Someone texted me a snapshot of my mother arguing with a woman near the fruit aisle at our local grocery store. The woman had questioned, "Is it true that you stole from your daughter?" My mother supposedly fell into tears and left the cart behind. It would have been sad if it had not been so predictable. They'd based their entire identity on being the nice family, the ones who hosted holidays, donated to church, and shared happy images every Sunday morning. Everyone understood it was an act. Elliot, my lawyer, was unrelenting. Each communication from him felt like progress. He'd discovered evidence that my parents weren't in financial problems at all. Multiple accounts, a rental property, and an investment fund. The claim that they required the money was a falsehood. They had not been desperate. They had been greedy. That aggravated me more than the theft itself. They may have sought for assistance. Even after everything, I'm not sure I said yes. However, they didn't. They just took. The hearing was planned for the following week, but before it began, their lawyer contacted them. He sounded tired and nearly defeated. He said that they wished to settle quietly. If I agreed to confidentiality, they would refund the entire cash as well as a portion of my legal fees. Elliot looked at me across the table. "It's your call," he said. "You've already won technically. This just determines how public it becomes." I did not even hesitate. "No deal," I replied. "We're finishing this properly," he said, hardly smiling. "That's what I expected you to say." 5 days later, we received official notice. They were abandoning their countersuit, returning the entire $1,500, covering half fees, and delivering a written admitting of collecting the money without express consent. It was the legal equivalent of waving the white flag. They had not apologized. They had not even called. However, they had been compelled to admit the truth on paper, where it could not be distorted or changed. That was sufficient. Elliot and I signed the paperwork the following morning. As soon as it was filed, I transferred his fee and closed the folder that had been sitting on my kitchen counter for weeks. The lawsuit was finished. However, the repercussions was not limited because once the settlement was made public, the remainder of the tale leaked. People who had previously defended my parents stopped responding their calls. The neighbors stopped waving. Their pastor reportedly advised them to spend some time away from the congregation. In other words, they were discreetly banished. I did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. Only a tired quiet, a final hush that wasn't pleasant. 12 days later, the money was back in my account. I glanced at the figures, recalling how hard I had worked for every dollar. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt tired. That night, my sister texted, "Are you happy now? You win." There is no apology or ownership, only contempt. I deleted the message and banned her number. Then I did the same with my parents. I changed my locks again and installed a video system. I wanted to be absolutely certain that they would never cross that threshold again. A week later, I received one final piece of news. Their rental property, which they had been using as a side income, had fallen through. When the tenants realized what they had done, they moved out. Apparently, they did not want to rent from the couple who had stolen from their own daughter. That's when I discovered that karma doesn't always come crashing down. Sometimes it simply dismantles people piece by piece, leaving them with precisely what they deserve: silence, shame, and each other. It should have felt better, but it didn't. Winning against one's own family does not feel like victory. It seems like severing a limb to halt the infection. When people ask me what I learned from it, I never tell them the entire tale. I simply argue that if your own parents are willing to take from you for money, you will never look at love the same way again. Because when the people who reared you demonstrate that they'd rather have your money than your trust, you begin to wonder if anyone, friends, lovers, anyone, is ever truly safe to allow in. It would have been simpler if they had simply vanished, faded into the background, learnt their lesson, sat in their humiliation, and moved on like regular people with a shred of dignity. But this is not how people like them behave. For a few weeks after the settlement, everything remained peaceful. No more messages, sightings, or foolish legal stunts. The money was returned to my account. Their names were banned on my phone. I'd installed new locks, a camera system, and ensured that no one else had any keys. It should have been over, but people like my parents aren't sure when to leave. It began with small things. A birthday card in the mail, unsigned. But I recognized the handwriting, the same sparkling script my mother used when she put messages in my lunchbox. An email to my work account from an unknown address with the subject line, "Are you happy now?" Then a cousin called to say she ran into my mother at the bank. Apparently, my mother was still telling folks we were just going through a hard phase, that the entire situation was a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. She hoped Lauren would eventually come to her senses and return home. Home, as if that place was ever safe. But the real breaking point occurred on a Sunday afternoon in late autumn. I'd just returned from a long hike, the air crisp and the leaves half dead on the trees. I turned onto my neighborhood and noticed a familiar car parked just past my driveway. A brown Honda with a dent in the back bumper and a slightly misaligned front license plate. My father's automobile. I froze in the middle of the street, sweat drying on my neck and hands still curled around my empty water bottle. My mother went out first, as if this was usual, as if she had simply happened to be in the neighborhood and wanted to say hello. She appeared older, thinner, and her hair was grayer than I remembered. She grinned as if nothing occurred. My father, Richard, remained in the driving seat. Of course he did. She began to move toward me slowly and cautiously, her hands folded in front of her, as if she were making herself small and non-threatening. She came to a stop approximately 12 feet away, right beyond my property line. I did not speak. I did not blink. She mentioned my name once. I said nothing. Then she asked, "Can we talk?" Just talk. And that's when I realized something significant. They still believed there was a version of this in which they could be forgiven, in which I would allow them to explain, cry, and perhaps offer a wobbly apology before returning to playing home. They did not comprehend the distinction between hurt and done. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was finished. I turned and walked back the way I had come. I didn't say anything, didn't even look back. I circled the street, came back around, and waited at the corner until I seen their car drive away. Later that night, she left a voicemail. It was short. "We simply want to put things right. We had no idea how far this would go." She still didn't get it. It did not go anywhere. They took it there. They opened that door. Boer, crossed that line, emptied that book, and then had the audacity to pretend astonishment when I didn't roll over like I used to. I changed my number the next morning. That same day, I put my home on the market. 4 weeks later, it was sold. I moved to a new city, a new house, and new locks, leaving no sign of them. I made certain that even the mail forwarding did not mention their last name. I altered my emergency contact information, created a new will, and updated everything. A clean slate. They don't know where I live anymore. They never will. The hollowed-out book came with me, but it no longer contains money. It now keeps copies of everything. The lawsuit, the settlement, the email logs, and the text. I keep it not because I am fearful, but because I have finished explaining. If anyone wants to rewrite this narrative, I have the original script, and people attempted to modify it. An old neighbor phoned me once and said she saw my mother crying on her porch, missing her kid. I asked if I could find it in my heart to speak with them again. I informed her I had decided in my heart to leave without looking back. That was the last time someone inquired. Funny thing is, folks like my parents rely on silence. They rely on the fact that most children won't discuss what transpires behind closed doors, that we will defend the image, swallow the pain, and enable them to carry the story because it is easier than ripping everything down. But they chose the wrong daughter for that. They exploited me for years, taking advantage of my money, time, guilt, and quiet. When I stopped contributing, they took. When I attempted to hold them accountable, they retaliated. Even when they lost, they came crawling back, not to make amends, but to reclaim control. The difference now is that I recognize who they are, and I understand who I am without them. Stronger, calmer, sharper, quieter, perhaps, but not silent. Because when individuals demonstrate how little your trust means to them, you stop communicating in their language. You communicate through closed doors, unlisted locations, changing numbers, and unreturned voicemails. And when they finally show up on your street, seeking to push that last barrier, you let them see your face one last time, just long enough for them to know the door they're banging on no longer leads somewhere they're welcome. And then you walk away permanently. The final major upgrade. I honestly thought that was it. New city, new home, new phone number. I changed everything. Nobody knew where I was. There are no common places and no public social media. I was finally free. Or so I thought. 8 months after I moved, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not an email or a phone call, but a physical letter, handwritten with no return address. Just my first name on the envelope, spelled correctly in the exact way my mother always did. The soft N at the end, not the harder spelling everyone else used. I stared at it for a time, did not open it immediately away. I didn't even touch it. I walked inside, placed it on the counter, and stared at it as if it would explode. Part of me wanted to burn it rather than read it, but curiosity won out. Inside there was only one page. No greeting or date, just this. We're selling the house. Things have changed. You should stop by before it is gone. You might want to watch it one last time. Some of your belongings are still here. I didn't need a name. It was them. What shocked me the most was not the attempt to reach out, but the tone. As if nothing had happened, as if we were still a regular family with loose ends to wrap up, as if breaking into my house, stealing from me, lying, suing me, and ambushing me outside hadn't been enough. I did not answer, but it went under my skin. Selling the house indicated that they were serious. Perhaps they were moving, perhaps trying to downsize after the damage, perhaps attempting to flee from it. I didn't care. I needed nothing from the place. But something about it bothered me, the thought of them packaging up what little evidence of me remained and throwing it away like trash. So, I made a decision. I drove back one final time, did not go to the house. I did not contact anyone. I parked a block away and walked by as if I were a stranger. Hood up, head down. It was vacant. The porch was unadorned. There's no furniture, no wind chimes. The curtains are gone. There is a for sale sign out front. The grass is dying, and the paint is chipping at the windows. The place appeared hollowed out, as if it had aged 20 years and 8 months. And at that moment, I felt nothing. Not sadness, not nostalgia, but a strange, quiet contentment. As if witnessing a movie set being demolished after the final scene. They weren't home. The lights were off. The garage door was partially open. Inside, I noticed a few cardboard boxes placed against the wall. I continued walking. That night, I composed my own letter, which contained only one sentence. There's nothing left for me to collect. I did not send it, just wrapped it up, slipped it into the old hollow book, and sealed it shut forever. A few weeks later, I received word from someone distant. They'd moved out of state to a smaller town with no friends close and no remaining social links. My sister Hannah moved in with a guy she hardly knew and stopped responding their phone calls. Their world had now shrunk enough to match the size of their options. I started over, truly this time. I joined a running group, resumed freelancing, and found friends who didn't inquire about my family because I didn't bring it up. No more defending them, no more hoping for a change. Just living. One night, I sat on my back porch watching the sun set behind the trees. It was still calm, and then I realized something. The narrative did not finish when I shut them off. It ended when I gave up waiting for an apology. It ended when I no longer needed them to understand, and there was finally place for something else in that space where the anguish had previously existed. Peace. Not because they gave it to me. I built it myself. Nobody gets to steal that. My parents' voices cracked through the phone. Living with her is awful, but we're only here for the money. Salves. My sister laughed, as if it were a joke. I'm Claire, 33 years old, and one late evening turned my life upside down. I had just finished what seemed like a typical phone call with my folks when I noticed they hadn't hung up. Their voices cracked through my phone, crisp and uncensored. As they spoke with my sister, my father's tone was chilly and almost mechanical. It's difficult to live with her, but we are simply staying for her money. Before I could process it, my sister's laughter pierced through the air, cruel taunting, as if she had known the truth all along. My palm grabbed the phone so firmly that it ached, and my heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it was about to break free. The room whirled, and my gut twisted, but I didn't weep or scream. I just sat there, paralyzed, as each syllable cut itself into me. They assumed I had gone oblivious, while in fact I was hearing their treachery in real time. Each second stretched beyond infinity. My parents, the people I trusted the most in the world, saw me not as a daughter, but as a bank account. My sister's laughter rang in my thoughts, each note taunting me and reaffirming how little I really meant to them. I remained on my couch long after the call had finished, staring at the black screen of my phone and repeating the scene over and over. Had things always been this way? Had each pleasant phrase been tinged with calculation? I did not have the answers. All I knew was that nothing could undo what I'd just heard. These remarks had drawn a line that I could never cross again. They changed everything. Before I proceed, I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever discovered something about your family that changed the way you viewed them? Please share your story in the comments. I'd like to know how you handled the weight of betrayal and what it taught you about trust. The next morning, I poured coffee as if nothing had happened. The kitchen smelled like toast and bacon, like it always did, but every motion seemed like I was acting in an unrehearsed performance. I placed plates on the table, flipped pancakes, and wiped off counters, my hand steady despite the storm in my thoughts. I needed to keep it together. I had to watch them without giving myself away. My father shuffled in and grabbed a mug without glancing at me. His gaze shifted to the newspaper, avoiding mine as if he knew I'd heard something I shouldn't. "Morning," he murmured, barely audible, before hiding his face in the sports section. I nodded, forced a smile, and watched him drink his coffee too quickly, as if he was in a hurry to get somewhere else. My mother followed her bright, phony voice as she talked about a neighbor's new automobile. "Isn't it fancy?" she asked, laughing too loudly and fiddling with a napkin. "I agreed," I said calmly, but my gut twisted. She was trying too hard, compensating for something. Then my sister Lena slouched in, absorbed to her phone, and barely grunted a greeting. Her thumb sped across the screen, most likely going through social media or texting someone about her failed clothing brand. She didn't even look at the breakfast I'd prepared. I kept moving, cleaning plates, but my eyes were keen, capturing every detail. Dad's fidgeting, Mom's fake enthusiasm, and Lena's indifferent demeanor made them seem like strangers with familiar faces. I'd always assumed we were a close-knit family who shared everything. 4 years ago, I purchased this large house in Portland, Oregon, so we could all live together. After my grandfather died, I inherited enough to cover the mortgage, bills, groceries, utilities, and even Mom's shopping sprees. I assumed they had moved in gratefully. Dad retired early. Mom, too, and Lena, a few years older, had relied on me since her business failed. I'd paid for everything, no questions asked, thinking it was what families did, but suddenly, every recollection seemed contaminated. Had they always viewed me as a financial account? I remember Dad asking about my finances last month, with a casual yet questioning tone. Or when Mom pressed me to treat them to a lavish supper, her smile was too big. Lena never offered to help out, always stating she was between jobs. I'd dismissed it, supposing they were just suffering. Worry. Their activities appeared to be more deliberate now. While washing a pan, I took out my phone and launched the Note app. I put, "Dad avoids eye contact. Mom is very happy. Lena does not care." I added extra times. Dad inquired about my investments. Mom is suddenly interested in my work bonuses. Lena's incessant phone scrolling. Each element seemed like a puzzle piece, producing an image I wasn't expecting to see. I wasn't sure what they were hiding, but I'd find out. Later that day, I caught Lena glancing at my laptop, which was left open on the counter. When I stepped in, she hurriedly closed it, muttering something about checking the weather. My stomach churned. Something seemed wrong. I stuck to my routine, drove to my software work, and coded during meetings, but my mind was elsewhere. I remembered giving Mom the nice coat she wanted for Christmas last year. She'd held me and called me her rock, but those words suddenly seemed hollow. Dad clapped my shoulder, happy of my success. Was it pride or greed? Lena had scarcely thanked me for the money I gave her for business costs. I believed I was helping, but perhaps I was just their meal ticket. By evening, I was sitting in my room, phone in hand, going through my notes. I added another. Lena checked my laptop today. I did not face them yet. I needed more than suspicion. I would observe and delve deeper. Sure, they assumed I was clueless, but I was fully awake now. This, my house, was no longer a home. It was a stage, and I had finished playing their game. By Wednesday, I was noticing things I had previously disregarded. Dad's harsh and probing queries about my finances felt different now. At breakfast, he leaned across the table, coffee mug in hand, and said, "How's that investment account doing, Claire?" His tone was casual, but his eyes darted away too quickly, as if he was looking for something. I shrugged, said everything was okay, and switched the conversation to the weather. He didn't push, but the air was thick, like if he was waiting for me to slip up. I noticed him later, flipping through stations on the living room TV, his fingers tapping nervously. It wasn't a one-time event. He asked about my work bonuses last week, and he wanted to know about my savings the month before that. I'd assumed he was just being a concerned father. Now it felt like he was keeping score. Mom wasn't doing much better. She returned home that afternoon with shopping bags, luxury purses, a silk scarf, and shoes priced higher than my monthly vehicle payment. "Just a little treat," she explained, smiling cheerfully as she unpacked them on the kitchen counter. I nodded, but my thoughts raced. Those weren't minor things. I'd seen her splurge before. New dresses, fancy cooking gadgets, but this was too much even for her. She noticed me gazing and giggled, brushing it off. "You work so hard, Claire, and we deserve to enjoy it too." Her comments stung, as if she thought my money was theirs to squander. I didn't confront her, simply kept my face neutral, but internally I was adding everything up. Lena was the absolute worst. She hadn't worked in months and said her fashion business was on hold. I discovered her splayed on the couch, phone in hand, surfing around social media rather than looking for work. "Anything new with your designs?" I inquired, keeping my voice light. She hardly looked up and muttered, "Not yet. I'm too busy." With what? Posting selfies and liking others' postings? I remembered when she had begged me for a loan to launch her brand, which I had given without hesitation. Her sloth blazed at me, a clue I'd overlooked for far too long. That evening, I began digging by taking a stack of bills from a drawer in my home office. Utility bills, credit card statements, and restaurant receipts. They were all in my name and paid from my account. I hadn't considered it previously. I only wanted to keep the family comfortable. However, as I flipped through, the numbers did not add up. A $600 supper at a steakhouse I had never visited. A $2,400 charge for boutique apparel that I did not possess. A membership to a streaming service that I didn't use. My hands shook as I spread the papers on my desk. Each one is a question mark. Who was spending this? Mom's baggage appeared in my head. Dad asks questions. Lena's non-stop scrolling. I noted down the charges on my phone, next to the notes I had started on Monday. The list grew, and so did the knot in my gut. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling and attempting to make sense of it. Have they always been like this? When I accepted my IT job, I remembered family dinners, Mom's loving hugs, and Dad's happy smiles. Were we real or part of the act? Lena used to tell me about her dreams and failures. She now felt like a stranger, as if I were only a means to an end. I wanted to believe that they loved me, not just my bank account, but the proof was building up. I didn't have proof yet, not the type I could present and demand answers for, but the signals were clear. Later that week, I saw Mom sneak a credit card statement into her purse. Her movements were rapid, as if she didn't want me to notice. "Just organizing," she replied when I raised an eyebrow. I didn't purchase it. At dinner, Lena grumbled about her phone being too slow, implying that she needed a new one. Dad chimed in, saying I could help out because I was doing so well. I smiled nervously, said I'd think about it, then excused myself to my room. Alone, I reopened my note app and typed, "Mom hit a statement. Lena wants a new phone. Dad's pushing again." I wasn't ready to address them, not without something concrete. That Friday, I sat alone in my office, repeating their remarks, not the ones on the call. I put those out of my thoughts, but they had repeatedly encouraged me to open my wallet. I glanced at my computer screen, code blurring as recollections became clearer. Last summer, Mom insisted on a family vacation to the Smoky Mountains, claiming it would be beneficial to us. I had paid for the cabin, food, and even gas, while she grinned and termed it bonding. Dad had urged me to pay for their car repairs, claiming they were short on funds. I had given out thousands of dollars, thinking I was helping. Lena was the most daring, always asking for just a little to keep her fashion fantasies alive. I supported her website, fabric orders, and marketing. None of it ever worked out. Each memory seemed like a brick, forming a barrier between the family I imagined I had and the actuality. I couldn't remain in that workplace surrounded by lines of code that made more sense than my life. I got my jacket and headed to a downtown coffee shop where I'd planned to meet my buddy Maya. She was already there, sipping a cappuccino with her laptop open to a graphic design job. I slid into the seat, and before I could stop myself, the story came out. The call, my parents' betrayal, and Lena's nasty laugh. Maya's eyes flared and then softened. "Claire, that's awful," she replied, grabbing for my hand. "You don't deserve that." Her voice was steady and grounded me. She didn't sugarcoat it, simply listened and leaned forward. "You're smart. Don't let them play you. Get the facts. Protect yourself." I nodded, her words breaking through the fog in my thoughts. She did not try to make me feel better or pretend it was not serious. She simply provided me clarity. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter and able to breathe again. Driving home, I began to tear apart old memories that had been buried under the weight of familial allegiance. Growing up, Mom and Dad had always prioritized Lena. They paid for her art lessons despite the fact that we were struggling financially. When I started college, they barely celebrated because they were too busy bailing out Lena from a failed modeling job. I had pushed my way through school by coding late at night, while Lena partied, relying on their support. I believed I had moved on from that mindset. Buying a property in Portland, Oregon indicated we were now equals. But the more I remembered, the clearer everything got. They had always seen her as the star and me as the safety net. It wasn't love that motivated their choices, it was all about convenience. As I pulled into the driveway, my determination hardened. I wanted answers, not just suspicions. Back in my home office, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. I had reviewed bills previously, but this time I would go further. Every transaction, transfer, and withdrawal. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I retrieved statements from the previous 8 months. I didn't know what I'd uncover, but I knew it wouldn't be just hazy receipts. If they were utilizing me, there would be a trail. Dad's questioning regarding my assets, Mom's shopping bags, and Lena's constant excuses were not random. I created a new note on my phone and labeled it Proof. Over the weekend, I accessed my bank account. My home office was quiet, with the only sound coming from my laptop when I opened the financial dashboard I'd been ignoring for far too long. I'd been paying for everything: house electricity, Mom's shopping, Lena's dreams, but I'd never really looked into where the money went. Now I clicked through the transactions, my heart sinking with each one. There they were, dozens of transfers from my funds to an account I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars were delivered in installments over months, branded consulting fees or miscellaneous. I double-checked the date. Some matched times when Lena had offered new concepts for her clothesline. Others lined up for Mom's treats. My parents had access to my secondary account to cover household expenditures, but this was different. They had not asked or said anything. I scrolled on, my fingers trembling. A $5,000 transfer was made last month, followed by another $3,000 2 weeks ago. I accessed the account information and discovered the receiver, a company registered in Lena's name. My sister's unsuccessful fashion venture, which she said was almost set to restart, was being funded with my money. I leaned back as the truth struck me like a slap. They weren't just squandering, they were funneling my inheritance to support her fanciful ambition. I felt ill, deceived, and needed to hear it from them. On Sunday morning, I discovered Mom in the kitchen, chopping veggies for lunch. I kept my voice steady and conversational. "Hey, Mom, I was looking at some bank statements. I saw some big transfers. Do you know anything about them? She hesitated, knife poised over a carrot, then grinned too fast. Oh, just some gifts for Lena, to help her get back on her feet. Her gaze did not reach mine, instead darting to the counter. Gifts? I asked, coming closer. Thousands of dollars without asking me. She chuckled with a tense edge. Claire, don't make a big deal. It's family, and we share, right? Her words were light, but they felt like a dodge, a cozy lie. I nodded, seeming to let it go, but my thoughts were racing. She was hiding something, and I wasn't buying it anymore. I haven't confronted Dad or Lena yet. I had to make certain to defend what was mine. That afternoon, I traveled to a nearby bank office in Portland, Oregon. The teller, a friendly woman wearing spectacles, guided me through the process of opening a new savings account that only I could access. I sat in her office signing documents, my phone ringing with a text message from Lena. Can we talk about my next collection? I ignored it, concentrating on the paperwork. Back at home, I logged in again and deposited half of my inheritance, 6 figures from my grandfather's estate, to the new account. It felt like reclaiming a part of me. I changed the passwords on my other accounts and locked my parents out of the secondary one. They'd notice quickly, but I'd be prepared. On Sunday night, I sat at my workstation, marveling at the new account balance. The transfers to Lena's business were not simply thoughtless. They were premeditated, a betrayal orchestrated behind my back. Mom's deception about the gifts proved it. I recalled all the times I had trusted them, paid over money, and believed we were a team. Now I've seen the truth. They had taken advantage of me, and Lena was complicit. My determination hardened. I wasn't simply safeguarding my money. I was defending myself. I opened my note app and added one last entry. Mom lied about the transfers. They're stealing. I didn't know how I'd confront them, but I knew I would. Soon. Sunday supper began normally until I spoke up. The dining room smelled like roasted chicken, and plates clinked as Mom passed the mashed potatoes. Dad cut the steak with his knife steady, while Lena read through her phone, scarcely touching her food. I sat across from them, my fork laying on my plate and my heart beating. I'd been planning this all day, mentally rehearsing the words. Evidence, transfers, lying. Hidden statements were stacked in my head like a deck of cards. I couldn't eat or pretend anymore. I placed down my napkin, took a deep breath, and continued. I heard your call last week. You did not hang up, and I know what you really think of me. Silence struck the table like a hammer. Dad's knife halted in the middle of a slice. Mom's smile froze, and Lena's phone fell to her lap. What are you talking about? Mom inquired, her voice raised and trembling, and I fixed my gaze on hers. You said living with me is awful, but you're staying for my money. Lena laughed as though it were a joke. Dad coughed and laid his knife down. It was just talk, sweetheart, he explained, his tone overly mild, as if he were calming a child. We didn't mean it. Mom swiftly nodded. We were joking, Claire. You know we love you. Their statements seemed prepared and hollow, like lines from a lousy script. I turned to Lena and waited. She gazed at her plate before laughing sharply and dismissively. You're blowing this out of proportion, she remarked, rolling her eyes. That laugh, that sneer, was the same as over the phone, and it made my blood boil. I pushed my chair back, stood, and joked. Then explain the thousands you transferred to Lena's business without asking me. Mom's face turned pale and Dad's jaw tightened. That was for the family, Mom mumbled. We thought you'd want to help. I cut her off. Help? You lied, Mom. You called it a gift when I asked. I trusted you, all of you, and you've been using me. Lena grumbled and crossed her arms. You're so controlling, Claire. Always acting like you're above us. Her comments stung, but I wasn't done. I got out my phone, launched a social media app, and displayed a screenshot. Controlling like this post. Lena described me as a stingy control freak who hoards her money. I discovered it that morning. Oye, Sammy. A public post on her page slamming me to her followers. Mom gave a gasp. Dad turned away, and Lena's smirk disappeared. I tossed the phone on the table, the screenshot staring back at them. I saw the transfers, the lies, the post. I'm done being your bank. Dad tried again, this time using a stronger voice. Claire, calm down. We're family. We don't mean harm. But I was done calming down. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't mock you behind your back. I glanced at each of them, Dad's guilty stare, Mom's shaking hands, and Lena's indignant expression. I want you out of my house, all of you, by tomorrow. Mom's fork clattered onto her dish. "You can't mean that," she muttered. Lena laughed, bitterly this time. "Good luck living alone, Claire. You'll miss us." I did not flinch. "I'll manage. Pack your things." They sat startled as I walked to my room. My heart hammered, but my steps remained strong. I'd given them everything: my home, my money, my trust, and they'd thrown it back at me. Lena's article was the final straw, proving she never saw me as a sister, only as a resource. I locked the door, sat on my bed, and opened my note app. I typed, "They're leaving. I'm free." The house was still mine, and I'd keep it that way. They may attempt to negotiate their way out, but I had had it. Monday morning, the house seemed deserted. The dining room table where I confronted them last night remained bare. No plates, no voices. My father, mother, and Lena had packed their belongings and left by daybreak, wheeling their luggage out the door, while I remained in my bed, avoiding goodbyes. I moved through the living room, observing the spaces. Mom's favorite throw blanket is gone. Dad's reading glasses are vanished from the coffee table. Lena's charger is no longer twisted on the couch. They'd moved to a modest rental apartment across Portland, which I'd overheard Mom say to a friend on the phone while loading the car. The silence in the home was deafening, but it also provided a peculiar sense of relief, as if I had dropped a weight I had carried for far too long. As I was making coffee, my phone buzzed. Mom texted, "Claire, we're sorry. We never meant to hurt you. Can we talk?" Dad texted, "You're overreacting, sweetheart. Let's fix this." Lena's message was shorter. "You didn't have to kick us out. Call me." Their words seemed like a pull on the part of me that still desired a family, but I could see through them now. The apologies were too rapid and professional, as if they were attempting to entice me back in. I put the phone down, leaving their messages unanswered. I'd had enough of their excuses at dinner, as well as their phony promises of joking and family sharing. I wasn't falling for it again. By lunchtime, I was sitting in a downtown lawyer's office, a tiny practice suggested by a colleague. The lawyer, a lady with sharp eyes and a notepad, listened as I described the transfers, lies, and social media post. "You need to secure your assets," she added, taking notes. "We'll draft a cease and desist letter for any further unauthorized access and review your property rights." I nodded and signed the paperwork to begin the process. My house and inheritance were mine, and I'd make sure no one touched them again. The lawyer's cool efficiency grounded me, reminding me that I was taking charge rather than simply reacting. Back home, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the area where Mom had sliced vegetables and Lena had browsed her phone. The freedom was real. I could breathe without their judgment and demands. But my heart grieved because of what we had lost. I remember Dad teaching me how to ride a bike and Mom making my birthday cakes. Even Lena braided my hair when we were kids. Those memories felt so distant now, tainted by their treachery. I didn't cry, but the sadness hung heavy, a silent reminder of the family I'd imagined we were. I opened my laptop, logged into my new bank account, and saw the balance I had protected. It wasn't only about money. It was my future, and I was willing to fight for it. 6 months later, I moved to a new apartment. The space was smaller than my previous home in Portland, but every nook was mine, clean, peaceful, and devoid of secrets. I had sold the property, pocketed the profit, and established my life on my own terms. My days were filled with coding projects, late-night debugging sessions, and coffee runs that were free of family drama. I lived for myself, not for others' expectations. Maya stopped me one evening, bringing takeout and a mix of old music we used to listen to in college. "This place suits you, Claire," she added, smiling as we unpacked the noodles on my new couch. We smiled as we discussed work and her current design client. No heavy confessions or advice needed. It was just friendship, easy and real, the kind I'd almost forgotten. I learned about my father and mother through a common acquaintance. They were getting by in their leased abode. No more extravagant dinners or designer handbags. Dad had gotten a part-time work at a hardware shop, and Mom was selling her old jewelry online to help pay bills. Their lifestyle had disintegrated without my money to support it. I didn't feel vindicated. Rather, I felt distanced, as if they were characters from a narrative I had abandoned. Lena fell harder. Her social media posts describing me as domineering and stingy had backfired. Friends and fans turned against her, pointing out her entitlement. Her already fragile fashion firm failed altogether when her last backer walked out. I noticed her profile go silent. There were no more selfies or pitches, only a ghost of the image she had tried to sell. Looking back, I've learned to trust my instincts. That unpleasant sensation I'd suppressed for years was right all along. I had allowed love to blind me, believing that family meant loyalty regardless of the circumstances. However, loyalty does not imply ignoring lies or allowing individuals to drain you. Protecting my worth, money, peace, and boundaries was the most difficult but ultimately rewarding decision I made.